We did. We gave a whole speech about it.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. First of all, thank you all for being here. I've got a couple of announcements to sort of go through before I will hand the microphone to Doris Epstein, who will then introduce Monique Schwarz, our internationally acclaimed, renowned director, who's here from Yerushalayim and Montreal. So it will be myself, then Doris, and then Monique, and then the movie, followed by some questions and answers. So, first of all, on behalf of the Lodzer Shul congregation, thank you all for being here, and on behalf of myself, Alan Herman, who's with the Canadian Institute of Jewish Research, we are very grateful to the Lodzer Shul congregation for hosting us and for allowing us to have a home for this movie tonight, and for all the other events that they've been kind of to host us for. In case you would like to know more about Lodzer Shul events, there is a terrific bulletin that they put out once a week with lots of great stuff, and Charles, who's right here in the front, is the one to speak to, and he puts it together along with Jonathan Usher, and lots of good stuff. So, yay, Lodzer Shul. Now, on to the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research. Once again, I'm one of the Toronto co-chairs, Doris Epstein, who will be up speaking in a moment. She's another one. And in terms of what to tell you about CIJR and about tonight's event, I'd like to point out two coincidences that I think they must mean something. Tonight's event, when we booked tonight's event, and when we arranged with the Montreal office and with Monique to have her here in Toronto, we did not know at that time, and discovered after the fact, that there is a Toronto Jewish Film Festival happening for about 2 weeks, and we're overlapping in there. And so the fact that you're here tonight means that you've chosen to discard the Toronto Jewish Film Festival in order to come to our event tonight, which I would say is the really hard-hitting, meaningful Toronto Jewish Film Festival. So thank you for that. Secondly, the second coincidence that aligns with tonight's event, again, we couldn't have planned it this way, and yet just yesterday, the B'nai B'rith put out their 2016 audit of anti-Semitic events and anti-Semitic incidents, which I believe was the highest in 35 years. How could we have known that? And yet, I guess deep down we did know that, and that's why directors like Monique took the time and went through the effort to create tonight's movie, and that's why tonight's movie is as relevant as ever, and I'm sure you're all aware of that, so thank you for being here at such a timely occasion. Now, as for CIJR, as for the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research Toronto chapter, in case you've not already come across us before, our origins are in Montreal. Back 30 years ago, Professor Frederick Krantz and a handful of other professors took a look at the raging anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism happening on the university campuses, and they said, we do not like what we're seeing here, we're not going to cede this ground without one hell of a fight, and so was born the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research, as this group of professors booked events, had talks, had conferences, had training classes, produced publications. Some of you may have seen me handing out the Israfax. That is the academic publication that has been around for years. Anything and everything to counter the mass of misinformation that is out there that vilifies Israel and takes away the very pride that we should all have as Jews towards Israel and towards Zionism. In essence, tonight's event, while we have many types of programs, tonight's event in particular, I would say, falls within the mandate that we built from that time of battling it out on the campuses to when we expanded into the communities as well and offered programming that really shined the spotlight on those issues, those inconvenient truths that many other venues just don't want to go near. Some of you may remember the Jewish Enemies of Israel event that was held at Beth David back in September, and it was highly attended, and it was incredibly controversial, but it was essential to be had. Tonight's movie falls into that, And if you do not want to miss out on other such events, please make sure you sign on to our mailing list tonight. So, that is actually it for me. I'm now going to hand the floor to Doris Epstein, who will introduce Monique. Thank you all for being here.
Alan mentioned the spike in anti-Semitism, dramatic spike, and not just in Canada, but around the world. So this film couldn't be timelier, and we're lucky enough to have the filmmaker, Monique Schwarz. She's a daughter of Holocaust survivors from Vienna, born in Switzerland, lived in Paris, and then moved to Australia, and she now lives in Jerusalem. Her award-winning film, I don't know if any of you saw it, was at the Toronto's International Film Festival, called Mama Drama, The Jewish Mother in Cinema, and it got international acclaim. In tonight's film, the focus is the foremost pressing problem of our time: the rapid increase of anti-Semitism in its current form, anti-Zionism and anti-Israelism. It took her 10 years of research and thousands of miles of travel around the world to make this film. And why did she do it? Here's her own statement. I was shocked by the level of emotion and hatred directed at Israel. I was overwhelmed by the lies, fabrications, and double standards applied to the Jewish state by media outlets, governments, and institutions like the United Nations. With horror, I realized that an alarming number of pundits, politicians, and academic elites were actually proposing that Israel should not exist. This documentary has been shown in major cities, and she's continuing with her tour. Tomorrow she'll be in Calgary, and I urge everybody to see this film and not to miss it. There's copies of the DVD for sale outside the door if anybody's interested, but I would like your reactions after. We'll have a Q&A after and a discussion, so stick around. And now, Monique Schwarz.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for one, coming out in the cold, and two, missing out on the Toronto Jewish Film Festival. I have been there and I have screened there, and okay, fine, this is really good here. So I'd like to tell you something about the film making process. It took me 10 years to do this, which is not particularly a huge amount of time. Mama Drama, The Jewish Mother in Cinema, also took me 10 years from writing the script, raising the money and actually getting it done. This film took 10 years to make, and the thing that was absolutely shocking in making this film is that, you know, in Australia, where I sort of was 10 years ago, people knew me a little bit, you know, I think, okay. And I would get into the front door of the funding bodies, both Jewish and non-Jewish. And I've been very lucky because I've been funded for a lot of the sort of films that I've made, and they're relatively esoteric in a particular sort of way. And they're off the beaten track in a particular sort of way, although they've done really well and have been very well accepted, and in fact are even entertaining. Anyway, so the funding bodies, when I did my submissions to the Australian film, the television stations, the Film Finance Corporation, all the various funding bodies, they said, oh no, we won't, no, this is not interesting to us. And I thought, oh, okay, fine, good. So I went to the Jewish funding organisations, of which there are quite a number in Melbourne, Australia, where I was living before I went to Israel. And the terrible thing that I discovered was that they all said, you know, and I'm not a bad filmmaker, you know, I'm respectable, I do it, they get around, they're interesting enough, they're entertaining enough, they've been screened and everything, the works I've done. Then all these Jewish funding organisations said, oh Monique, we can't possibly fund this, if they answered. And the ones that did, I'd say, and why not? And they'd say, we can't fund it because it's too extreme. And I'd say, oh, and what's extreme about it? And they would say, and they said, it's extreme because of the point of view. And what was my point of view when I started, and in my proposals? And my proposals are quite nicely written, I've done a lot of them. I said that anti-Zionism and anti-Israelism basically is another version of anti-Semitism. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to say that. You don't have to, I wasn't throwing rocks, cutting people's heads off or anything like that. That might be regarded as a bit extreme. I was just saying anti-Zionism and anti-Israelism and all that stuff and crap you see on the news, in the newspapers, by many academics, with all due respects to the academics here that are with us, by all the filmmakers, and I know about this because it's a world that I've lived in, all of that behind the veneer of the language and the big words like settlement, occupation, actually, it's simply, we hate Jews. And so that's what the film was about. And I was a little on the discouraged side by this sort of total reaction of oh, it's too extreme. And in filmmaking, particularly the sort of films I make, you should never, ever be discouraged, because that's the nature of filmmaking, full of obstacles, and you have to get over them. Anyway, so I got over the obstacle of this particular sort of response by meeting Professor Robert Wistrich. I went to a talk he did and talking to him, and he was really, he said, I must continue with this film, I must make it, and I interviewed him for 3 hours. Usually when I interview someone, really maximum an hour. I like to do it in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Robert, I interviewed him for 3 hours, and I fainted during the interview because whatever, but I got revived and I continued. So anyway, so thank you to Robert. The premiere, the opening of the film in Jerusalem was dedicated to the memory of Robert Wistrich, a great man, a great scholar, a great loss. So you may not enjoy the film in one way, but it's visually beautiful and nice music, you might like that. And please, those of you who don't have to rush off, wait till the very last frame. There's an image after that which says Amber Films. Wait till the very, very last image of the film, because in that last image you have the meaning of Judaism in relation to anti-Semitism. So it's all in one image. So thank you very much.
So you didn't say how you end up getting the money to put this together?
Well, when
The mic as well.
Does she need the mic?
She needs a mic. Yeah, she needs a
Do
mic.
I need
Everybody go to the mic.
the last 3 films I've made for being digital films. The reason I made digital film, before that I made films on film, chemical film. 16mm, that's what I used to work in. But to make a film like that on 16mm, this film had a budget of $350,000. So, and it had to go through gatekeepers. I told you I never got past the gatekeepers with this film. So luckily I enlisted my husband, who couldn't say no, to do the sound and security. I might add he wasn't brilliant at security, but I enlisted my husband to do the sound and security, and the rest we did ourselves. So I've got a digital camera. Now I have to buy a new one. That's a bit of a problem because I'm going to buy a good one. So for the work, like the camera, I did. The sound, he did. The producing, you know, organising permits, all of that, I did. The first cut, that is to say, I had 20 hours of material. I cut it down to 4 hours, and then I took it to the editor. I had an editor, Ryan Lipchik, who did, and I've done the last 3 digital films like that, and the editor brings the film down to whatever the appropriate length is. He cost me a certain amount of money. Well, I can't buy a new car. That's how it happens.
Any other questions?
My compliments on a very moving project. My question, to what extent is this film being shown to non-Jewish audiences?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's really hard to achieve. I'm going to, as soon as I get back to Israel, and if any of you can help in this, I'd be grateful. I'm going to approach the Christians. I've got people who are connected to the Christians. I know that they're interested. They've got lots of television channels and stuff like that, and they'd be interested in this. That, you know, they would show it. Yeah.
That's a very moving chronicle of our problems. After 2,000 years, we continue to face the same problems we always have. And even though Israel, for now, represents an island of safety for us, even though it's not a completely safe place, the general impression one gets is of pessimism.
Oh, I don't think we should be pessimistic.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the people who talk, including I forgot now Chesler's first name.
Phyllis.
Yeah, Phyllis.
I don't
Who
think
usually tends to be much more upbeat than she was in this film.
No, she's not upbeat about this subject. But my answer to the
This is not a complaint about you.
No,
You've given us a cut of reality.
No, I don't think the film is not pessimistic. I mean, these are all the terrible things that happen, and all around us we are surrounded by a lot of enemies. But this is why I said to you, stay to the very end, because the title sequence and the last shot in the film express the Jewish way. And the Jewish way is, someone hits you at night or the day before, and you get up the next day and you keep alive. Life goes on. We are for life. And so all those sequences at the end, in between the credits, there's dancing, there's Haredi dancing, there's Hillel dancing, there's Haredi children in the water, in the fountain in Jerusalem, and there's other children that aren't. So really inherent within the culture of the Jewish people, in my opinion, this is why I don't feel pessimistic, is the drive for life, and in a way that's its own protection. You know, we are surrounded by enemies who want us dead, no question about it. And it has always been like that, and this time it takes the form that it has, no questions about that. But you know, we have a culture that goes for life.
Andrea.
It is a terrific synopsis of what's been and what is right now. My question is really, how do you get in front of Jewish people?
You need the body.
Not just Christians. Of course, Christians and Muslims have to see it, and that would, in my mind, mean getting it on public broadcasting, because you're not going to get it into a mosque. But what I fear is, look at the numbers here. It's not just about the Jewish Film Festival. It's a topic that Jews don't want to talk about. And there is anti-Semitism in the Jewish community. I think we underestimate how significant that is.
Well, I agree with you. I think there is anti-Semitism, and I think the Jews, one of the ways that Jews deal with calamity and catastrophe is to go ahead and, in a way, say it's our fault, right? It's all our fault. Oh, why is there anti-Semitism? Oh, because Israel's just too aggressive. Why is there anti-Semitism? Because Bibi's horrible. Why is there anti-Semitism? Because we're too rich and everyone's jealous of us. Why is there anti-Semitism? Oh, because we interfere in the government. Oh, we're the worst anti-Semites, really, the worst. So I think, and to get this film, you know, there are gatekeepers, and in my opinion, the worst. I don't care that the Arabs want to kill me. You know, I walk around Jerusalem, there are Arabs, they want to kill me, who cares? I don't care about that. I don't care that there are certain branches of the so-called progressives who really want Judaism to be neutralised and emptied. I don't care. What I do care about is that the Jews, and the evidence from the Pew reports and everything like that, in particular in North America, the Jews are becoming their own enemies in a really serious way, and that's part of it, you know.
Yes.
No, yeah.
Yes, this gentleman here.
Here. He's been trying.
Oh, where? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to take what this lady said one step further. Noam, I think it was, in your interview, he said that Jews have lost their intimacy, their knowledge of what it is to be Jewish. And so he said that they accept and they internalize the anti-Semitism. And so I think that this should be seen by the federations. I think this should be seen by the movement leaders. I think that this should be seen by the leaders of the Jewish community who have failed.
Oh, without question.
They have failed. They have taken the ultimatum of France in the 1790s to the Jewish community, either become Frenchmen or leave. And the French community said yes, and Napoleon spread that out through Europe. And what we have is a very similar situation in terms of Jewish identity that Jews of Germany had. They were Germans before they were Jews, and they were willing to sacrifice their Jewish identity to be Jewish, to be German. And I think that you have that here, and you have that throughout the West. And until Jews can stand up and say, I'm proud to be Jewish, and I will identify as a Jew, the world will treat them like doormats.
Well, let me tell you a story. Pardon me, I'm trying to turn this thing off. Anyway, I can't do it. If you hear it go beep, beep, don't take any notice. Anyway, so I did an opening in Melbourne, Australia for the film. I had a lot of people come to the screening. And at that screening was my first friend that I made when I came to Australia. I've known this woman for 60 years. Right? She's a doctor. She and her husband in particular, are really firmly ensconced and entrenched in all those macha organisations. I call them macha organisations, the federation, the this, the that, the this. The film was over. Greg Rosshandler, who you see a credit for, puts his hand up and says, how much money do you need for marketing? I gave him a figure. I hadn't worked it out, but I gave him a figure. He said, fine, I'll give you half, right? I was happy, you know, but before, when someone says they'll give you, and until they actually put the money in the bank, it's a long time. Actually, he came up with the money. But my friend from 50 years stood up and she said, what I'm really worried about, and I was wondering, what's she coming up with? I'm really worried that someone is going to get an anti-defamation suit against you because you're being inflammatory and racist. Right? I sort of looked at her and tried to keep my cool and be gracious, but that is an example of, you know, it's sort of an example of the sort of thinking. Because, I mean, here am I stepping out of line, you'll probably shoot me or something. But my observation in Australia, and don't quote me, but I do think that if you look at it really closely, you'll see that the leaders, the big machers in those big organisations that dispense millions of dollars, and they want to hobnob with the Prime Minister. They want to hobnob with everyone who's got a lot of money. And they want to hobnob with the people who are powerful. And so they don't, when a film like this comes along, oh no, get it away from me. They don't want to know about this because it says something that is actually, if they took notice of it, then their actions in relation to all these powerful people would be different. Now, I have a friend who works in one of the few American organisations that is stand up and fantastic. This organisation's marvellous, I'm not mentioning names. This friend of mine said that what the Jews want to do, the American Jews, but it's not necessarily just the American Jews. If you observe, the Australian Jews want to do this as well, is they want to stand on the White House lawn and shake hands with the president and have a photo and give it to their grandchildren. That's what they want to do. If that's what they want to do, they're not going to, they don't want this. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to actually denigrate it. Oh, it's racist. Oh, it's extreme. Oh, you haven't got the other point of view. Yeah. Oh, hello. Yeah, if I make it, you know, all that sort of stuff, because then it enables them to continue on in the way that, you know, the way that, to slide in with everybody else.
I thought the entire thing was the other point of view.
What? Sorry?
The entire movie was the other point of view.
That is, the entire movie was the point of view you never see. Or you never see it anywhere, you never hear it, and that's the whole movie.
Marty, go ahead.
I want to compliment you on your powerful and movie.
Thank you.
And very emotional. There's one point though, that I mean it's a historical type of evolution, but there's one point that I found isn't spoken very much. I once I was on television, I was seeing an interview by an admiral who teaches at the American Academy, and he said, the Naval Academy, and he said there's 3 causes of war. And what I'm seeing is that the history of anti-Semitism is that we've been at war with all these other cultures ever since
They've been at war with us. They've been at war with us.
Well, that includes parts of Judaism as well.
Yeah.
And but he said there's 3 causes of war, and the last one really made an impact on me, and I don't hear it very much. The first cause is self-defense. The second cause is self-interest. You'll never guess what the third one is. Well, maybe not never, but the third cause of war is honor. This is what is, I think, fueling the Muslims, the Nazis, and even the Jewish ones, that what they're doing is honorable.
Okay, yes, yes.
I've been to Australia several times. I've been to Australia several times, Melbourne, Sydney, the whole coast. Now, I did a lot of research.
If you come to the mic, it'll be clearer.
Hard to hear.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on the Jews in Australia, and it appears that they've been embraced by the Australians, especially when it came to the forming of Israel, the support that they've been getting. A lot of the Jewish leaders, mayors of major Australian cities have been accepted, so on and so on. But that's not my topic, because you mentioned Australia. I think what's happening now with Mr. Trump and his family and Jewish associates, I suspect that there's going to be a big backlash, especially against the Jews. Once things get kind of settled, I think we're looking for more anti-Semitism. That's just my opinion. That's just an opinion I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
2 points that I wanted to make. You mentioned the Toronto Jewish Film Festival, and I used to attend the festival every year, and I would line up faithfully, and there would be 20 or 30 movies, and I would see them all. And I would come away so incredibly depressed because all of the films would be, from my perspective, either anti-Jewish or anti-Israeli and very pro-Palestinian. The Palestinian was always the victim and victimized by the aggressive Israelis. That's one point. The other point, and this is about what we do to ourselves. And the other point is that I recall many years ago when we were all supportive of saving Soviet Jews. And during that period of time, we marched together, we stood together, we raised money together. There were very few factions. Now, with all due respect to people here who may belong to 17,000 different organizations, there are so many Jewish organizations, so many labels, so many people looking for the same money, rubbing shoulders with the same people, trying to get the same benefits, and each one, I wouldn't say hates, it's a little strong, but each one is either envious or covets the other or their requirements. And I just feel that we are eating our own. There are too many organizations, too many events, too many factions, and we've forgotten the whole. We have just separated and separated and separated so much that it's easy for a group to kind of tear off and become different, have a different motivation, have a different goal, a different mission. We don't have the same mission anymore. I look at the mission statement of some of the Jewish organizations, even some of the smaller ones, and it's become really frightening. There's a New Israel Fund, and I mean, it's horrifying, and there are more and more and more of them every year. If you look at the list, it used to be this big, and now it's this big. It's something that I don't understand how we're ever going to overcome it. But if we don't find the whole again, we will be destined to.
Can I make a comment as to what people can, in my opinion, I'm not an expert about anti-Semitism. I've just made this film, and it's up to you to say whether it's a good job or not. So I'm not an expert. My credentials aren't in, anti-Semitism or anything like that. But what we can do is that when we are confronting, and we will confront more and more in the Jewish community, our children, our grandchildren, and our friends even, making ridiculous comments about Jews and self-destructive comments, what I think that the way to do that is to keep your cool always, which sometimes not so easy, and deflect back the question. I told this to I suggested this when I was in Montreal too. My son told me he works in defence in Australia, like with aeroplanes, big, billions of dollars worth of aeroplanes. And he's surrounded by a lot of yobos who say, oh, the Jews in Israel are just like the Nazis. They talk about it in the film. It's a very common thing, and Jews do it. And my son took this, he told me he did this. He kept his cool and he kept his sense of humour, and that's the important thing. He said, now that's a very interesting point. I want to ask you something. That's really interesting, and I want to know more. Are you saying there are concentration camps in Judea Samaria where Arabs are taken in and gassed and then cremated? No, of course not. Oh, okay. Are you saying that the Arabs are walking around with a little thing on them to say they're Arabs? And they'd go, oh no. And then you go through the whole list in a humorous, light way, and they of course answer, no. And then you say then, well, you know, that's so fascinating. I'm glad we talked about this, but I don't get what you mean then with your first statement, which I thought was really interesting. What do you mean then? And if you do that, they don't run away and it's shut down. You know, you've got, so I think that's a way of dealing with that in a fairly positive way.
Julia does that.
Yes.
Yeah, just
building on that, about your comment now, my son, while in medical school, had a interesting encounter with one of his roommates, who he just became roommates with. He was a nice Catholic boy who said, oh, you killed Christ. And rather than him saying, oh, I didn't really do it, it was somebody else, he said, yeah. And if you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to kill you next. They became very close friends, and in a matter of weeks, he was treating his friend to watching the movie about the Belsky brothers, Defiance. What I was originally going to say was that...
that's a good approach too.
Works.
Humor.
Yeah, humor. Yeah, and it worked. And in other words, cut the crap and just... There's a big problem, and this is, Jews need to get away from this mindset that, oh, we have so much influence. There are so many famous and popular Jews. We're proud of Barbara Streisand. And we're proud of Sarah Silverman. And we're proud of Debbie Schultz-Wasserman. And we're proud of our local MP, Michael Levitt. Okay? Sometimes it's not such a good idea to vote somebody into office because he came to the world through a Jewish birth canal. Okay? Okay? Regarding this guy's comment on Kushner, yeah, I do think, personally, I think the Jews are better off in the Kushner versus Bannon fight. I like Bannon.
Yeah.
Okay?
Last year, I was picked on jury duty, and it was a first-degree murder trial. We were sequestered, and we were there for 6 days. On the third day, I said, oy vey, we're not getting anywhere. And the people said, where'd you hear that? I said, oy vey is a Jewish expression. I'm Jewish. Now, one of the jurors, who was Asian, a mailman, said, you know your people killed Jesus. I did not do anything about it. I should have gone to the judge and told her what he said, because I don't think he should have been on a jury.
You should have said,
No, I think his son's approach, you should have said, yeah, shut your mouth, otherwise I'll kill you too.
Crucify you.
Yeah, why not? Now, hang on. Before everyone
We do
goes,
it to everybody.
can I just interrupt, Doris? Before everyone goes, it'd be really great if anyone wants to buy a DVD.
I announced it, it's outside, Barry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if it's outside. I think
Where is it? Where are they?
I've got them here, I think.
Okay, Barry, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, I hope your next movie doesn't take 10 years. And what is your next movie going to be about?
Well, Doris asked me that today, and I said, oh no, I don't want to say, but I may as well say, you know, what's to lose. So it's a love story about Israel. It's a love poem to Israel. I want to do a very political, aggressive film, but in a very poetic, musical way. And I can do that. You know,
It's a good antidote to this.
and my film before, that I did before this, called Tree of Life, which is a film about the relationship between Torah and the environment. Well, I mean, that's a sort of neutral subject, really. Was very poetic and gorgeous. I mean, if I say so myself, God will strike me down.
One last question. Oh, we have a couple more.
Oh, no,
What's this gentleman over here?
The demographic in this room is probably representative of the demographic that that use this film wherever you go. Very few young people. Have you made any efforts or any strategies, in your opinion, that might work to get this sort of movie onto campuses, or even more particularly into high school, Jewish high schools, more particularly even than non-Jewish high schools?
The Jewish community. I mean, I read the Pew Report today. There was an article in, I've forgotten where, I think it was Mosaic, written by Daniel Cordes, about how the young secular Jews are completely disappearing. The older ones, hello, aren't. The secular ones are, but the older ones who are sort of religious, my husband would scream if he was here, religious, they are hanging in there and being pro-Israel, but the young ones aren't. We are trying really hard. By we, I mean my distributor, Katie Green, and myself are trying really hard. That's why I need you all to buy a DVD so I can pay for another 2 weeks.
Yes, over here.
If I could make a suggestion as a young person, and I totally agree with you, because I'm disappointed to see that there's not other young people here to see this film, and they should, is that to reach out to Hezbollah Fellowships Canada.
Who Hezbollah?
I'm happy to give you the contact information, but they are the leading campus activism. They are trying to empower and help students on campus, which is where a lot of the BDS movement is happening, and a lot of the anti-Israel propaganda is feeding into the lefty minds and making them crazy. I think that they would love this film. A second thing is not just reaching out to the Christian communities, but the National Association of Japanese Canadians. I know that sounds weird, but I actually met the executive director, Mr. Noma, who, because of their history, the shared history of being in internment camps in Canada, they do have a connection to the Jewish identity and the history, and because it was the Jewish community in Canada that actually helped them transition back into post-war Canadian community. So I think he's always said that there has to be a way that maybe we can tie the two cultures together, because as a Chinese Canadian who grew up Catholic, yeah, you know, it's crazy.
It's such a mixed metaphor. I love it.
From a Buddhist father and a Catholic mom, a Christian brother and an atheist sister, but I'm very pro-Israel. I'm a passionate Zionist, but I think other people need to hear this because they don't hear it. But making that connection, maybe that he could show it to the Japanese cultural community. I don't know.
if I give you my card,
Well, why don't you come up after and give your information to Monique?
Sure, and I don't even know these people personally, it's just because I've networked.
You know them
Because
personally.
I feel like we need to make
So
those
we need
connections.
to, I'd like to, if you think that it's
Okay, come
suitable.
up after and give it,
have
anybody
comments.
else? We're just winding down. Yes.
It's just a question. I missed the first 20 minutes. I apologize. But did you delve into or cut away from the Jewish theology on the suffering and history? Did you avoid it, or did you cut it out, or did you just steer clear of it?
I never had, oh, I only had that section that Raphael Israeli talked about. He talks about Jewish, the Jews know about suffering and they accept that, you know, like Jews suffer and that's not good, you know.
Yeah, that's not what I'm referring to.
You're talking about theologically, from a Christian side of things.
No, theology refers to, there's a Jewish theology. It's a deeper subject that maybe we'll speak for a moment later.
Yeah.
Okay, I invite you all to save May 25th at Beth Tikva, where we'll be presenting Geoffrey Clarfield in Is Jordan Palestine? Make sure you come. 25th.
Who knows our round? What time? Who knows our round?
Thank you all. Good night. And drive safely. At Beth Tikva.
7:30. 7:30.
Did you get in a plug like your book about some DVDs?
Yeah, but no, hello, if you want to.
So, sorry to interrupt, Doris. If anyone here is just itching to get a copy of Monique's movie, she's available and she's ready to sell and come and talk to her.
I'll buy one.
Thank you.
Shalom.
No, that every.